Hello, guys. This is Harsh Bharadwaj. I'm back again with the lesson number three on the English from the English literature syllabus, and this lesson is about V.S. Naipaul's "A House for Mr. Biswas," which is part of the syllabus of paper two, UPSC mains English literature syllabus. So paper two prose and written by V.S. Naipaul. So we'll do two lessons on House for Mr. Biswas. This is fairly important lesson, fairly important text. So hopefully let's do something about this and let's see how much we can understand in 10 minutes. So two lessons of 10 minutes, nice and crisp. So, before all these lessons, I presume and I suggest if you haven't read the text, I presume that you have read the text, but if you haven't, watch these lessons always after you have read the original text. Okay, so that's the presumption, so that you have read the text, you understand the story, and I won't be going through the story because that defeats the purpose. I won't be talking about the summary or the synopsis of the story. So you've read the story, that's when you come here. So this is one of the quotable quote that you can use in your exams. This was given by a famous critic, Robert D. Hamner, and the novel has been called an epic, and its protagonist an everyman. So Biswas' desperate fight to gain his own house is symbolic of man's need to develop his own identity. So can you see some couple of themes right here? So this is the quest for identity, right? Quest to find your own identity and your own roots. So that's the major theme of the book. Moving forward, the two threads to this the two threads to the theme. One is right here on the right, the hero's quest for identity and independence in an impoverished colonial society. So that quest for identity and that quest for root, it's contextual to where he is, where Mr. Mohan Biswas is. So he's in an impoverished colonial society. So this is 1960s Caribbean when the Britishers have left the Caribbean, and it's in a dilapidated and in a bad state. So there are no industries, there is no employment, and it's in a really bad state. And that is the sociopolitic of the times when where this book is set, where a character like Mr. Biswas is struggling to find who he is and struggling to find his place in the wider world. So that's one quest for identity and independence in an impoverished colonial society. So you can never forget the promise. Second is tackling of the derelict and overburdening legacy of Hindu culture in Caribbean, countered by westernization. So that's also another theme where people like Mr. Biswas of Indian origin, where their forefathers were brought in from India or other British colonies to work in the sugar plantations in the Caribbean or other sugar state or other farming state managed by the British, private British owners. So those people who came from India or from wherever they came, people from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, other colonies, they were brought in. So they clung to their legacy, their cultural legacy, and as you can see from the Hanuman household, that Hindu culture is very predominant, and people of Mohan Biswas's generation and generations coming after Mohan Biswas, they cannot really connect to that Hindu culture or Hindu legacy. So for them, it's simply a symbol of what their forefathers were, and they can simply not connect to it, and they find it. Mr. Biswas, at least, finds himself shackled by the legacy of Hindu culture. He wants to break out of it, and he actually lets his son and his children decide what kind of religious preference they want to follow. So he frees his next generation from these shackles, but he himself struggled with it throughout his life. So these are the two major themes. And house, in the title A House for Mr. Biswas, is the metaphor for these two themes. So house is where you find yourself. House is both the spatial and the symbolic place where you feel most comfortable, where you found yourself, where you're independent, where you're free, where you have your own identity, where you possess an asset. So that's the symbolism of the house. We'll talk about it in this lesson a bit more. This is we'll talk about the house because this is one of the major concepts that UPSC focuses around, the significance of the title. And let's quickly talk about various characters you might have read. Mon Biswas. So it's always good when you do a quick character sketch from any book that you're reading or even poetry. So Mohan Biswas comes across as somebody who's forever struggling with his life. He's responding and reacting to whatever life throws at him. He doesn't seem to have a plan, even though we understand that this is a quest for identity and his lifelong goal is building a house. But do you really think that he had this plan right in the beginning? He's just going from situations to situation, unfortunate situation to situation. He's at best he's reacting to stuff and things, and he never had a plan. But his inner subconscious desire was triggered when he was in Hanuman household. So that's where he felt very much oppressed, and that's where his desires were triggered, and then he started to think about building a house of his own. So this is Mohan Biswas, and eventually the ending where he's not able to live in his house for long and he succumbs to his illness. People say it's a sad ending, but I think that he gifted this gift of identity and independence to the next generation, to his son and daughter. So even though he struggled throughout his life, but he conquered those things, and he passed on the gift of independence to the next generation. Shama, his wife, was a typical a faceless, voiceless slave in a Hanuman household. And Hanuman household is actually built like a British sugar plantation estate where everyone worked. Nobody had a voice or a face. They were just workers. They were just cog in the whole situation, and they were just pawns, and they were not allowed to have their own assets or take their own decisions. And Shama completely fitted into that until Mr. Biswas took her out of that Hanuman household, and then she became a perfectly good household homemaker. Mrs. Tulsi, and a typical authoritarian matriarchal figure in the Hanuman household. It's interesting that Naipaul chooses a female to be the boss of Hanuman household, which is normally a patriarchal society where a man or a male leads, but here it's a woman, which has some the hints towards the Indian system of cultural legacy, where in Indian mythological and religious aspects, female deities are supposed to be higher than the male deities, and she actually was the goddess of the house, and she ran everything. Ajoda is an interesting passive character who was the father that Mr. Biswas never had. So he played the role of a father in Mohan Biswas's life indirectly. He never claimed his place in Biswas's life, but he was the one who loaned him the money to build his house. So he was the one who gave the house the identity to Biswas, and he was the one who kept him when they were homeless. So he gave him the first home, and he gave him the eventual home that he called his own house, Mr. Biswas. Anand is the manifestation of everything that Mohan Biswas ever wanted in his life. Somebody who's independent, somebody who's liberal, somebody who takes his own decisions, somebody who's not shackled by the legacy of his legacy of culture and history of his time. So somebody who's free of the socio-political situations of the time, and he manifests everything that V.S. Naipaul would want to be, or Mohan Biswas would want to be. So more in lesson two, and keep everything that I'm saying. Think about it, and the lessons are supposed to make you think, and use your own head when you've read the book and you're tackling the questions. Okay, thanks a lot for watching, and